This video is brought to you by MUBI, a curated streaming service dedicated to streaming and elevating great cinema from all around the globe. You can get a whole month free at mubi.com/HOC 2023.
One incident happened with me where I realized the power of mainstream cinema. I knew कि इससे stronger platform हमारी मुल्क में है नहीं. It's the strongest platform you can have. If you want to tell a story that reaches out to millions, you have to be on mainstream cinema. There'll always be limitations, but the beauty is to work in those limitations. That's where true art emerges. Like, come on, we've seen industries like Iran, which have the greatest limitations around them. The greatest art has come from there. You know, a man cannot touch a woman, and the greatest romantic stories come from that society because they've had to think of more innovative ways to express romance than just a touch and a kiss. That's the easiest, right?
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us at Humans of Cinema. It's such a big pleasure. I was just telling you, मेरा पहला interview आपके साथ था.
I know, that's amazing.
और आपने भी मतलब उस time, like I was so nervous because throughout the flight, मतलब I was just feeling so nervous कि fuck यार मतलब interviewing Kabir sir and और उसके बाद लेकिन आप हम लोग मिले और you also kind of calmed me and it was really nice and so thank you so much for that. और and I'm so happy और मेरा तब से था कि मतलब फिर से करना है क्योंकि वो उस टाइम लोग भी इतने amateur थे कि मतलब वो रॉ फुटेज में डाल दिया और but I'm so happy, sir. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's such a pleasure. Sir, उस टाइम ना हम लोगों ने बात करी थी. I asked you what is the film that has probably influenced you the most. You had spoken about how you were on the set of Gandhi.
Yes.
Such a revelation.
That's a great story actually. Yeah. So actually when people, but this discussion happens where people especially ask filmmakers, so which are the films that influenced you, or which are the films that were something that you learned from. And it's not necessarily about that one iconic film that everybody liked. It's about that one film that made a difference to your life. And in my case, Gandhi is really that. Apart from the fact that it's one of the best films ever made, I really believe that even now, when I see that film, it stands the test of time and it remains, as evocative as it was at that point in time. Lekin, that's a very interesting story because I used to live in central Delhi. My father was a member of parliament. So we used to live in a place called Pandara Park, which is right next to India Gate. And it was I think it was a Saturday. So school was off and we were cycling around and I saw these busloads of people going towards India Gate, hundreds and thousands of them. So I got damn curious about what's happening and I cycled there and at one point they stopped me, me and one of my friends. They stopped us and they said, नहीं आप इससे आगे नहीं जा सकते. I said, क्या हो रहा है? He said, नहीं वो आपके कपड़े वपड़े गलत हैं, आप आगे नहीं जा सकते. So I said, हो क्या रहा है वहाँ? So they said, shooting चल रही है film की.
How old were you?
I must have been 10 यार.
10?
Yeah, 10, 11. So I said, हम इन कपड़ों में क्यों नहीं जा सकते? He said, नहीं आप लोग कुछ सफ़ेद पहन के आइए तो आपको जाने देंगे. So we quickly cycled back home, wore white kurta pajama, came back, left our cycle, tied it with our lock to the trees there in India Gate and went and slipped in. And the film was Gandhi, and it was the opening sequence of the film where his Gandhiji's funeral is going down the Rajpath. And if you see that, even today when I see that shot, I get goosebumps. There's no VFX.
आप कभी ढूंढ पाए अपने आप को? कभी ढूंढ पाए अपने आप को?
I wish. लेकिन इतना पता है. Somewhere in that, and so years
crowd
later,
is massive there. The crowd
is more than 1 lakh.
Yeah.
So can you imagine? Just so years later, because one of my ADs, he'd heard this story, he sent me a shot of the call sheet of that day. So I have retained that with me. I've kept it with me because I said this is actually the first call sheet of my life because I'm part of those and it's written number of extras 50,000, number of special invited extras 50,000 and it just goes on. Home guards 7,000, police 7. I think there's about 1.5 lakh people in that shot. It's unbelievable. And the scale. So, why that also, I remember that very strongly is that obviously that was the first time I experienced what is a film shoot, how does it happen, there were helicopters and all that. And then a year or two later, when the film released, we went to see the film and of course I was completely blown away by that film. Even till date, whenever I see it, I get blown away by that film. And then the LP came out. of the soundtrack, and
Yeah.
that's the first time that I realized what a background score is. My mother bought the LP for me. I used to hear it. So it's the first film that got me interested in trying to deconstruct how a film is made. अच्छा ये ऐसे गाने होते हैं,
Right.
इनको ऐसे background में use करते हैं. अरे ये इस scene में use हुआ था. And about Gandhi, I'd like to say that even today, in every film of mine, there is at least one shot that has been inspired by a shot
really?
of that. Yeah.
Consciously आप करते हो?
Consciously, at some point it comes to me when I'm writing, and it comes to me, if I was to take a shot like that, which was in Gandhi, this would really. So I somehow always find some way of putting in like that. And that film had a huge impact on me. Huge impact on me.
Were there any Indian films as well जिनका आपके ऊपर काफी influence रहा?
Of course. I grew up. My mom is a complete film buff. So when we were growing up, I was exposed to a very eclectic mix of cinema. क्योंकि as I said, my father was an MP, so MPs के लिए उस जमाने में हर weekend पे विज्ञान भवन में they used to do special screenings of film. So world cinema, and me and my sister used to be put into the car. My mom used to drive us to Vigyan Bhavan and we used to sit and watch. At that time, we found them terribly boring. French New Wave, Godard, Truffaut.
अच्छा आप ये सब फिल्में बचपन में देख
सारे
रहे थे?
बचपन में देखे थे. And obviously उस time पे maybe we didn't enjoy them as much as the Amitabh Bachchan films, but obviously they started seeping in somewhere.
Yeah.
And followed with that would be literally first day, first show of Mr. Bachchan's films. Because those are the 70s and 80s, right? So every Bachchan film, mom used to again put us in the car and take us to watch the Bachchan film. And then at that time, there was this whole rise of what in those days used to be called art cinema. Shyam Benegal was one of the, and Shyam Babu is a very close family friend. He in fact taught my mother theatre when they were growing up in Hyderabad. In fact, Shyam Babu in one of the interviews has also mentioned that Junoon, that where Shashi Kapoor's from this Pathan household, and he said a lot of the elements of that Pathan household is actually from my grandfather's house in Hyderabad. So I remember seeing Shyam Babu's first film, Ankur. Right. So as I said, growing up, there was a lot of cinema, all thanks to my mother. So we were watching the emergence of the art cinema, what that was called at that point in time. We were watching every Amitabh Bachchan film, and we were watching Godard and Truffaut and Fellini's in Vigyan Bhavan. In fact, years later, when I got my first national award for Kabul Express, the ceremony takes place in Vigyan Bhavan. So it was a very nice moment. I went back and I said, "Oh, this is where it all started for me." Yeah. So growing up, there was lots of cinema.
Your mother was a JNU professor, right?
No, my father was one of the founding professors of JNU. In fact, he was nominated to the parliament for his work in academics.
Got it.
He was not a politician, and he didn't fight elections to become an MP. He was nominated to the parliament. My mother taught for some time economics, but that was for a brief while. And then despite the fact that he was in JNU, my early sort of first 12 years in Delhi, we didn't stay in JNU. We stayed in Pandara Park because that was the sort of the MP's quarters. Then when he retired as an MP, when his second term got over, then we shifted to JNU. Then I spent a long time in JNU, and that time then I got into Delhi University. So I was like living in JNU, traveling to Delhi University, so I was having best of both the worlds. JNU used to have a lot of film screenings on weekends. So I think growing up, I was surrounded by a lot of cinema and all different kinds. So when somebody asks me what was your favorite film, very difficult for me because there are some films you remember as the impact they had on you. I think Bobby is my first memory of a film in a theatre.
Right.
And sometimes, you just see, you have these like little jhalak ek hoti hai. So you don't really know, did you actually experience that? Or is it just something you remember in your mind? Sholay, I remember, had a huge impact on me and continues to. And then, there were some films which were mom's favorite, which used to watch very often when the VCR came in. So those would have, I think film we would watch very often. So Peter Sellers films. बहुत था. It was a big variety.
And आप कौन से कॉलेज में थे वैसे?
किरोड़ीमल कॉलेज.
किरोड़ीमल हो गया. I'm from हंसराज.
अच्छा. I was doing economics there.
Economics, okay. पर हाँ मतलब दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में रह के, did you feel like the culture there and the environment there also kind of had an influence on you? Because Right
Of
after
course.
then, you decided that you want to be a filmmaker, right?
Of course. I think दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी और आप तो वहाँ पढ़ चुके हैं, बहुत ही यूनिक
Yeah.
एक्सपीरियंस है वो. उस टाइम नहीं हमें समझ में आता,
Yeah, 100%.
लेकिन बाद में समझ में आता कि यार हम बहुत privileged हैं कि
हाँ.
we went to a university like that.
100%.
And JNU.
Yeah.
JNU is also, I mean, just has a very, very special place in my heart. And I feel truly blessed that I could experience both. I never studied in JNU, but I lived there. And I studied in Delhi University. So Delhi University में भी उस time बहुत एक, and KM, my college especially, was culturally very active.
Yes.
हमारा जो dramatics society थी called the Players.
Yes.
Cable sir, who just retired last year, was legendary. तो वहाँ पे बहुत influences थे, JNU में बहुत influences थे. लेकिन at that point in time ना, it was in my mind, those influences not pushing me towards the direction. It was never कि cinema as a profession तो बहुत दूर की बात थी. उस टाइम ये जो मैं इकोनॉमिक्स कर रहा हूँ तो should I do masters in economics? At one point I was thinking should I do law? So there were lots of at one point saying नहीं IAS करते हैं because हमारे एक चाचा हैं, he was very senior in IAS.
DU में पढ़ने वाले सारे बच्चों का ही होता ही है एक.
तो he would say बेटा IAS करो. अच्छा हाँ IAS करते हैं. Then I thought मेरे को UN ज्वाइन करना है. UN कैसे ज्वाइन करते हैं? IAS करोगे तो IAS के थ्रू आप डेप्यूटेशन पे जा सकते हो. So these were the thought.
Yeah.
But my sister was probably had more clarity than me and more focus than me, was a year senior to me. और हमें ट्रैकिंग और माउंटेनियरिंग का बहुत शौक था. तो this is something that again came out of DU and JNU. I would trek and do a lot of mountaineering during my thing. That my love for photography actually came from my mountaineering. So the year that my sister Anusha was meant to go for the Jamia entrance exam, she was trekking somewhere in Kashmir and missed the date. So she took a gap year. Wow. And then I was graduating, so I used to tell Anusha, okay, wherever you're going, just pick up another form for me also. I was a complete drifter. So one of the forms she picked up was the form for MCRC Jamia, and I filled it in, and fortunately both of us got through. And then, I mean, once I went in, I realized, yeah, this is it. This is what I was meant for, because it was just fabulous. Those 2.5 years in MCRC was just, and it was very intensive. We used to live, eat, breathe, sleep that course. मतलब घर, any other social circles, girlfriend, boyfriend, सब खत्म हो जाता था. एक बार जामिया में घुस गए, so it was only about Jamia, and that then really is when we started watching cinema and started, understanding.
मतलब ये मतलब because you also doing photography, तो फिर तो तरीका ही चेंज हो जाता है ना देखने का जब तुम खुद करना स्टार्ट करते हो.
नहीं, फोटोग्राफी का तो अभी भी I will say my greatest love is still photography. For me, if somebody asks me what is that one thing you love to do, the one thing I love to do is pick up my 2 cameras and my lenses and just walk the streets of a city. मैं पूरा मतलब सुबह से रात I can just do that. मैं बहुत करता हूँ. My even on family holidays, my family knows कि a couple of hours around sunset, sunrise, I'll be gone.
Nice.
I really enjoy that. So yeah, I mean, still photography is still my passion.
Okay. अभी I was talking to Vikram Motwani sir, और मतलब ये मेरे लिए बहुत बड़ा एक sudden learning थी, because I want to be a filmmaker. And again, because I never went to film school, तो फिर मतलब मैं जैसे आपसे सीख रहा हूँ अभी, conversations के थ्रू सीखता हूँ मैं. So he said something so interesting जिसके बारे में तब से सोच रहा हूँ कि that he also just kind of started working with the camera when he was around 12-13 years old, and that just staying with the camera for those many years, now he realizes how big of an impact that had on him now as a filmmaker.
Of course.
And I think that is something that a lot of people don't realize कि ये कितना ज़रूरी है, that hands-on experience that you need to know how to. So आपके what do you think is like maybe one thing or a couple of things that are often misunderstood by the people about filmmaking? Or
no, I would agree with him completely. Seeing through a lens is a different world. And the more you do that, the more you understand what you're doing in cinema. It just has to become instinctive. And still photography is the fundamental of that. It's the basic. You have, and that's what teaches you how the difference between what you see with your eyes and what a lens sees. And the moment you start recognizing that, filmmaking becomes easier. Because, where you want to place your camera and what lens you want needs to become instinctive. It doesn't need, लोग मैं बहुत बारी सुनता हूँ लोग कहते हैं कि अच्छा ये break down कर लेते हैं, ये कर लेते हैं. I still feel it's instinctive. For me, I enter a place and I know this is the lens and this is where my camera needs to be. Because it's the years of still photography where I'm not over-analyzing and over-intellectualizing it. I just have a camera, I'm alone, there's no crew asking me questions. I know that I'm going to get my best shot from here. If I'll probably lie down and go down on the floor, or if I climb up, or I'm standing here. So, I mean, still photography is something that I always tell people, I tell my assistants, anybody who's wanting to have a career in what is basically the visual medium, right?
Hanji.
You have to take up still photography. It's the start of everything. Because it is a visual medium. That's where it all begins.
You started as a documentary filmmaker.
Ji.
What is an advice that you would give to your younger self now, considering where the journey that you've had from, documentary filmmaking to then making Kabul Express and to now making films, the kind of films that you're making today? What is something that you would tell your younger self today?
I'm not sure, because I know it might sound a little pompous, but I've been very happy with my journey. And I'm very happy with what I went through and the struggles I went through as a documentary filmmaker and what it taught me. Right. And so when I made the sort of lateral shift from documentaries to mainstream cinema, because I didn't go through the usual route of assisting somebody, or that's a I would say not easier route.
But did you never assist on a set?
I never, except for half a film, which is Gautam Ghosh's film called Gudiya. And that is also coming from my documentary. So basically what happened is that I was doing my documentaries. I started getting some level of frustration as a documentary filmmaker because at that point in time, unlike now, there were not too many avenues or there were not too many platforms where you could show your documentaries. So थोड़ी सी एक frustration आ रही थी कि यार हम बना तो रहे, and I'd become what you would say, I was pretty successful in getting documentaries commissioned from international networks, and I was being able to do the kind of stuff I wanted. अफगानिस्तान में बहुत काम शुरू कर दिया था मैंने, लेकिन ये था कि अच्छा ये documentaries हम बना रहे हैं, they're going to festivals abroad, they're going to networks abroad, लेकिन एक वो जो आपके audience के साथ interaction होता है ना, वो नहीं हो रहा था. And I started realizing that I'm missing that. At the end of the day, any communicator now wants to be able to have this interaction with his or her audience. And I could see even in my documentaries, I started thinking a little like, oh, I wish actually I could have this light come from here. And I said, yeah, why am I doing this? And then one incident happened with me in Afghanistan where I realized the power of mainstream cinema. I knew कि इससे stronger platform हमारी मुल्क में है नहीं. It's the strongest platform you can have. And if you want to tell a story that reaches out to millions, you have to be on mainstream cinema. And it's an incident that actually saved my life. I don't know whether I've mentioned it to you in the last time we spoke, where where
there were some locals who had seen some film, right? Some Indian film.
Correct. So basically, it was I was trying to get into Afghanistan, and we were stuck in a place called Dushanbe in Tajikistan, and हम घुस ही नहीं पा रहे थे till finally one day there was this helicopter that was taking off from Dushanbe going to Kabul, and we took that. It was a Russian military helicopter, so हमने उनको साइड में ले जाके थोड़ा सा मतलब इंडियन जुगाड़ करके थोड़े से $वॉलर दिए, and he hid us in his helicopter cargo and flew off from Dushanbe to go to Kabul. But before we could reach Kabul, he just brought it down in somewhere in the mountains outside Kabul, and he said, "Ab koodo yahan se." And we literally had to hang from the chopper and jump off in the middle of nowhere. And he took off, and there's this one guy who came towards us. All around, all we can see is mountains. There's one guy is coming. He's suddenly seen this helicopter come. Two guys jump off. Oh, zamane mein, so many special forces, ye sab aa rahe the. He was really angry. He had a gun in his hand, and he was saying something like really angrily towards us. He was speaking in Dari, and he was cocking his Kalashnikov. And I said, "Bhaiya, मेरी जिंदगी यही तक है. किसी को पता नहीं चलेगा हम कहाँ थे, because nobody knew we gone into that helicopter. Where we were somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan. वहाँ पे लाश पड़ी हुई, मतलब who would bother? And the only thing I knew is that these guys have a certain sense of warmth toward Indians. So जैसे जैसे आने लगा, we kept saying India, Hindustan, and suddenly he stopped and he started singing a song, मेरे सपनों की रानी कब
अरे
आएगी.
क्या बात है.
That day I realized, boss, Hindi cinema से बड़ा platform कुछ नहीं है. It literally saved my life.
Yeah.
And this is one of the opening scenes of literally of Kabul Express, and
Yeah.
my experiences of what happened with me as a documentary filmmaker in Afghanistan is the story of Kabul Express. Me and my friend Rajan
Yes.
Kapoor
Yeah.
are basically what John and Arshad are playing.
Yes, yes.
And that's why I took a very conscious decision, because a lot of people said कि आप डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज बनाते थे लेकिन आप सीधा मेन स्ट्रीम सिनेमा में हाउ डिड यू लैंड अप ओवर देयर. आई सेड फॉर मी इट वाज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. आई न्यू कि आई वांट टू डू मेन स्ट्रीम सिनेमा बिकॉज इन एज डॉक्यूमेंटेरियन आई वाज ऑलरेडी फेसिंग द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ लिमिटेड ऑडियंस. आई सेड नहीं यार, this is the platform on which I want to play and tell my stories and see if I am able to bring a little difference of my own to that, because when I entered mainstream cinema, पॉलिटिक्स वाज टैबू. मतलब क्या पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में बात मत करो. तो काबुल एक्सप्रेस चल तब भी एक बहुत छोटे बजट की फिल्म थी. आदि said okay, you say it the way you want to. And when it came out and he said no, this was quite a crowd pleasing film. He said it's not a heavy film. So he said
a lot of humor in the film.
There's a lot of humor and one thing which is very important that Adi told me, he said I am apolitical, but when you told me the story of Kabul Express, you explained the politics that I need to know to understand the story as the story went by. He said if you can do that,
right,
then even at a larger scale you can make political films, and that's exactly what my next film New York was. It was a more mainstream film, more mainstream stars in terms of I mean there was Katrina along with John.
There were more songs, there was romantic,
there was
two
for
romantic
the first
angles.
time background songs, not lip sync songs but background songs. Of course there was Nawaz, and Nawaz nobody knew at that point in time, but there was Nawaz, there was Irrfan.
I still feel by the way that Nawaz's performance in that film is still one of the best that he has done in his career.
One monologue that he
I was a kid when I was seeing New York, and उस time भी जब मैंने देखा, मैं वो pirated CD पे, sorry, as a kid.
आने को बोल दीजिए, sorry. I just want people to see it.
But yeah, I saw it, and उस time पे he came on screen. Of course, everyone knew John, Katrina, and all of them big stars, but Nawaz nobody knew, and I saw him, and I was still a kid, but I was like, dude, like who is this man? Because his performance जो आपने your craft.
A lot of people asked me after New York कि ये case study आपको कहाँ मिला? They thought he's a real guy.
It seemed like that. It really seemed like that.
I've said this. उस time पे at the time of New York we made in 2008. तो उस time पे casting directors ऐसे establish नहीं हुए थे. हम यशराज में casting खुद करते थे. हमारे कोई एक department.
जी.
Shanu had started, but it wasn't कि everything goes through Shanu at that point in time. तो हमारे assistant ही auditions कर लेते थे. And a lot of time actors ask me कि sir audition हमें समझ में नहीं आता उसमें you don't get the feel because it's a I said I totally understand, and you should not feel stressed, because as a director also we're not looking at an audition to be the be all and all. हम सिर्फ एक देख रहे हैं कि यार ability है या नहीं. I said in all my years I've only seen one audition which has blown me away, but that man happens to be Nawazuddin. So my assistant, who Ali Abbas Zafar, who was my assistant on New York, he came to me and he said, Kabir, there's a fabulous audition I have for that character. I said, dikhao. And I said, yaar, kuch bhi karo, we have to get this guy. So we get Nawaz, we take him to New York. It was his first time I think he was traveling abroad. So he was also, never done. He came and we set up that shot. It's a shot of basically Katrina interviewing him. And he starts speaking, and it's a one take. It's a non-stop 3-4 minute take, and I never did another take because when I said cut, half the crew, and half the crew was American, half the crew was Indian. Some of them were crying and some of them were clapping. That was the impact that his performance had over there. And I remember Irrfan walking in half an hour later and he said, यार वो सब बात कर रहे हैं कि कुछ नवाज ने कुछ performance है. I said, हाँ, I'll show you. And I took Irrfan to the monitor and I played the thing. And as he was watching it, just tears were streaming down Irrfan's face watching it. And he said, कहाँ है यार नवाज? And he went and hugged him.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was, I mean, what a moment that was. Of course, at that point in time, nobody knew Nawaz will go on to be what he is today. But he was such a fabulous actor. And I'm so glad I managed to work with him again in Bajrangi Bhaijaan.
Yeah, also another great performance.
Yeah, fabulous.
लोग 2 दिन पहली बात कर रहे थे कि मतलब
Chand Nawab.
Yeah.
Again, where again from my documentary, I love picking from reality, right?
Right.
And Nawaz's character in Bajrangi was, I'd seen this character on maybe 4-5 years before I'd written Bajrangi. वो ये character देखा था मैंने, and मुझे याद है, I made a mental note कि यार कभी ना कभी इस character को मुझे use करना है फिल्म में. So when I was writing the screenplay of Bajrangi, we came to the second half and we said, Achha, now his journey in Pakistan, I think he needs an ally. He needs somebody there to take him forward. And I said, yeah, what if we pick up the journalist from just after he's done that piece to camera? And that's what he is, right? His entry is basically that.
Yeah.
And I kept the name Chand Nawab. I remember the legal team coming in saying, sir, वो तो real नाम है. I said, हाँ, real नाम है. Because I'm showing him do exactly what he did. He said, we could have problems, he might object. I said, यार, आप see it holistically ना. हम उसको कैसे दिखा रहे हैं? वो फिल्म में क्या कर रहा है? How can anybody object to being portrayed like this?
Yeah.
They kept saying कि, and I told them, अच्छा ठीक है, मैं नाम change कर दूँगा. मैंने नाम नहीं change किया. I shot it like that. I edited like that. And we had many battles on that. But I said, trust me, my gut says there'll be no problem. And the film released, and 2 days after the film release, I got a call from one of the news channels saying, sir, we have the real Chand Nawab online from Karachi. Can you join us? And I went, and the guy was literally crying. And he said, Kabir bhai, aapne mujhe, you've given me a second life. And till date, I'm in touch with him. He messages me and sends me photographs from, he does shop openings and inaugurations, and he's become a star. So yeah, it's lovely when you pick from reality and it sort of blends into your stories and is able to connect with people.
Yeah. You were just talking about how documentaries and you were making it was a very different landscape. But अभी आप मतलब पिछले 3-4 सालों में इंडियन डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज का जो बूम हुआ है, मतलब I would really love to know from you कि मतलब how do you see it? मतलब
it's fabulous.
कान में 2 बार लगातार जीत गए.
Absolutely. No, it's a fabulous feeling to finally see, because firstly, this country is a gold mine of stories to be able to work on. So I'm not at all surprised that these stories that have come from, and both of them this year at Oscar, both those documentaries are stellar. Yeah. The one that didn't win the Oscar is also outstanding. So it's there. And as a filmmaker who's making films for the mainstream, I'm also now seeing myself pick up more and more for reality. I'm seeing myself pick up true stories more, pick up stories that have happened more, because I just feel there's so many stories lying here. Which have not been told, which are just waiting to be told, because they never had that culture. Hollywood, one thing about Hollywood is that they did it very successfully. Picking up stories from the contemporary history about people, maybe not very well known, but making a film out of it. We have started doing this recently, and the audience has also started enjoying that recently. So I'm seeing, just gravitating towards these stories. So I'm not at all surprised that stories like these are also being made in the documentary format and, winning hearts across the world. It's a natural phenomena because, there's so many layers to our country, right? So that's why you pick up these stories and you can say so much.
Yeah. Even in all that beats for that matter, what I love about most of the documentary films that are being made, जो कि जीत रही हैं, उनमें the politics is it's all there, but it's not being explicit. मतलब कुछ बोला नहीं जा रहा है, कुछ force fed नहीं किया जा रहा है.
See, but that is the best way to deal with politics. This is something which you have to, and this is something for me. It's a great something that I really stick by, especially in mainstream cinema. Politics, you can't make a film about the politics. Audience को bore कर. See, you have to respect the fact that principally an audience is coming to be entertained and engaged. Now, definition of entertainment doesn't mean laughing out loud and falling off a chair. Entertainment means anything that engages you, pulls you into that world, and for those 2.5-3 hours, it keeps you in that world. And if the film is good, will keep you in that world for days. That's the quality of a good film, that you keep thinking about for days. The film has to be really about a human story, and the politics have to be in the layers beneath. It's like whether you see a New York or whether you see even a Tiger, which is one of my more commercial films, or Bajrangi actually is one of my most commercial films, but also my most political film.
Yeah, 100%.
And there, it's always the layers beneath that you have to keep the politics. So you can watch the film at face value and enjoy it, but obviously if you watch the film and are able to access the layers of politics beneath, then the film becomes a little more profound for you. I think you will live with the film longer, you will enjoy the film more than people who just are seeing it at face value. Having said that, you can't take away from people who are just enjoying it at face value. You can't say, yaar, tumne meri film theek se nahi dekhi. No, you enjoyed it just for what it is and what we are saying. You don't want to go into the subtext, you don't want to go into the layers beneath. Fair enough, as long as you enjoyed my film. So that's very important. The moment you take on this position ki देखो बेटा मैं तुम्हें समझाने वाला हूँ कि ये you've lost the audience, so they get bored. And I also feel you should say the politics in a way that people are able to take it away and process it on their own. Don't lay it down in black and white.
Yeah, that's true. मेरे को वही लगता है कि आपकी फिल्मों का एक इमोशनल कोर इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग होता है कि मतलब एंड स्पेशली हाउ यू यूज म्यूजिक इन योर फिल्म्स, बिकॉज आई वाज जस्ट थिंकिंग अबाउट इट कि मतलब आपकी सारी फिल्मों में रोमांस लाइक स्पेशली विद रिस्पेक्ट टू रोमांस, मतलब वो कितनी मतलब चाहे कितना बड़ी नेशनल इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो रहा हो, लेकिन उनके बीच में you find these, you know, this beautiful moments of romance. है वो किसी भी तरीके का हो. नील नितिन मुकेश in New York, मतलब that is still the song of the heartbroken lover. मतलब you know, मतलब like even मतलब ऐ दिल है मुश्किल and all these films come still तूने जो ना कहा मैं सुनता रहा, वो अभी भी सबसे ज़्यादा वही हिट करता है गाना, you know.
True.
And for that matter in Phantom also, पहले क्यों ना मिले हम, I don't know if you know, पर वो रील्स पे अभी कितने टाइम तक ट्रेंड कर रहा था वो गाना.
Yes, I was told that it's a beautifully written song. I mean,
yeah, it's a beautiful song, and also, but just the fact that, you know, in that it's such a serious film, right?
Yes.
You know, Phantom, it's about such a serious subject. But उसमें भी मतलब, you know, you found this moment. सैयारा में सैयारा for that matter. I love that song so much. मतलब मैं वो मनी हाइस्ट देख रहा था शो, अगर आपने देखा हो. और उसके अंदर वो है ना सीजन 1 में कि वो दोनों ऑपोजिट साइड्स में एंड दे फॉल इन लव. मैंने सोचा था उस टाइम मैं एडिट बनाऊंगा इसका सैयारा में सैयारा लगा के. समझ रहे हो, दैट इज अ सॉन्ग दैट कम्स टू मी व्हेनेवर आई सी these two people from two different sides. So where does that come for you, like especially romance in conflict?
So I won't say just romance, I'll just say human moments between people. It could be romantic, it could be friends, it could be. So I think in some way I would trace it back to the fact that because I've done a lot of documentaries and travels in what we call conflict zones and all, one of my greatest learning periods in my life has been the 5 years I spent with a gentleman called Saeed Naqvi, one of the best known journalists of that time. He still writes, but obviously at that point in time he was a very, very well known journalist. Saeed Bhai, as I call him, Saeed Bhai used to be obsessed with one thing at that point in time, कि यार हम लोग जो है ना इंटरनेशनल न्यूज़ और करंट अफेयर्स जो है हम लोग सिर्फ BBC और CNN के प्रिज्म के थ्रू कंज्यूम करते हैं, लेकिन वो जो एक कहानी सुना रहे हैं हमें अबाउट समथिंग माइट नॉट बी रेलेवेंट टू अस, या वो जो एक मुद्दा उठा रहे हैं माइट नॉट बी रेलेवेंट टू अस. हमारे लिए क्या रेलेवेंट है, ये हम क्यों नहीं सुना सकते. उस टाइम पे हमारे चैनल्स ट्रैवल नहीं करते थे. तो सईद भाई का एक ऑब्सेशन था कि वी शुड रिपोर्ट इंटरनेशनल न्यूज़ थ्रू द इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव. Fortunately for me, I was just fresh out of film school and I met Saeed Bhai and I said, this is a great thing. I said, I can shoot, I can edit, I can do sound, I can do whatever you want. I can pick up really heavy stuff. Just I want to be a part of your team. And he made me a part of his team. And in 5 years, I traveled with him to in excess of 60 to 70 countries, doing these, soft features, sort of documentary features on current affairs with an Indian perspective. So I went to a lot of conflict zones, whether it's Bosnia, whether it's, I spent a long time in Kashmir.
Bosnia, you told me,
A lot of these places, where the Haiti, when the civil war was going on. And I realized when you're in these situations, it's not only about the politics, it's not only about what's happening. You're still living. There's still a life of people. हम लोग अखबारों में पढ़ते हैं कि लगता है अरे सब जल रहा है. सब नहीं जल रहा होता है, लोग वहाँ जी रहे हैं. There are moments there, and there are moments of humor, moments of emotion, moments of romance. Everybody's life is still going on, and myself, I've seen even in some of them, some really bizarre experiences in Afghanistan that which are life-threatening experiences. I've gone through a lot of life-threatening experiences in the course of my documentaries. I've realized this humor is like a pressure valve. You always do that. You always laugh. You always smile. There might be rockets being fired above your head, but you still find that moment of a warmth between another human being. So I think that's where even when I'm trying to write, I try and say कि यार अच्छा ये सब तो चल रहा है यार, लेकिन एक जिंदगी भी तो है जो इन सब में चल रही है. Can we find moments in that? So that the attempt is always to try and find those moments. As I said, always the filter that essentially this is a human interest story, and the politics are only on sort of in the layers around.
So मैंने अभी विदु चोपड़ा सर का एक इंटरव्यू देख रहा था पुराना, saying that in Parinda there was this climax shot जिसके लिए he needed some particular equipment but it was impossible to get in India, so he had to kind of काफी improvise करना पड़ा उनको, जुगाड़ करना पड़ा बहुत ज़्यादा. तो आपके इस एक्सपीरियंस आपको लगता है कि इंडिया में there are certain limitations that you've had to face with respect to just the availability of certain resources, or maybe with respect to the budget, that because of which you have had to do certain things which you would have liked to do otherwise, or in some other way?
होता है, लेकिन आई एम सेइंग नाउ आई डोंट थिंक टू मच अबाउट दैट यार. हर चीज में लिमिटेशन होगी आपकी. मैं एक्चुअली बहुत लोग कभी कभी मुझसे पूछते हैं कि अरे नाउ तो यू हैव बिग बजट. आई just because I have a big budget to make some more film don't think for a moment that anything and everything that I need is given to me. You always have limitations. You always have your imagination is always bigger than any budget provided to you. You know, even a Christopher Nolan at some point must be feeling यार मेरे को बजट नहीं दे रहे, मेरे को तो ये करना था. वो तो खैर make statements also कि मैं तो atom bomb फोड़ दूंगा and all that. But I'm saying I'm sure all that will not happen. But I'm saying there'll always be limitations. But the beauty is to work in those limitations. That's where true art emerges. Like come on, we've seen industries like Iran which have the greatest limitations around them. The greatest art has come from there. You know, a man cannot touch a woman. And the greatest romantic stories come from that society, because they've had to think of more innovative ways to express romance than just a touch and a kiss. That's the easiest, right? You want to show romance, just make the man and woman kiss. हो गया, आपका point बन गया. But imagine you can't do that, but you have to show the greatest of love between them. Now that's where a limitation then pushes you to take your art to another level. So this limitation of resources is something that is overstated. ठीक है यार, जितना है उसमें बताओ ना. अब मैंने 4 करोड़ में बनाई थी काबुल एक्सप्रेस, और some of my films have gone up to 150 करोड़ also. लेकिन कभी वो 150 करोड़ में भी लगता है यार ये थोड़ा और मिल जाता, मैं थोड़े और लोग ले आता, थोड़ा ये और कर लेता. So I'm saying वो तो हमेशा रहेगा, but you have to ultimately work within what you have. It can never be an excuse कि यार मैं तो ये करना चाहता था या तो ये दिखाना चाहता था, मैं नहीं दिखा पाया. I find that argument very erroneous.
Okay. As I said, just 4 film recommendations.
From where?
कहीं से भी, मतलब 4 फिल्में जो आपको बहुत पसंद है, जो आपको लगता है कि लोगों को देखनी चाहिए.
I'll probably name films which, again, as I said, it's not about so the beach में, he tells you, Danny Boyle, that there is no perfect beach. Right? It's how did you feel at that point in time when you were on that beach? So for a film also, there is no definitive superb film. It's what did that film make you feel? And so those are the films that I will remember in my life. And in no sort of sequence or order, I would, of course, I would say Gandhi, as we discuss hugely. I would say Jaane Bhi Do Yaro. I would say Sholay, huge impact on me. I would say Diwar. I would say E.T. and Star Wars. I mean, the kind of impact Star Wars had on me is unbelievable. And for months I dreamt about it, and I got obsessed with ये कैसे किया, ये क्या किया. And later when I could get a hold of, उस time internet तो होता नहीं था, get hold of videos and things that explained to me. When you go back to the first Star Wars, it is unbelievable what simple things they did to create the visual imagery. Such simple, basic stuff. That shows, the mind. आजकल क्या है यार, आजकल तो हमें ऐसा करो, ऐसे मार्स को यहाँ ले आओ और ना अर्थ के पास लेके घुमा के ना वापस भेज दो, हाँ सर कर देंगे. It's so easy.
I know what you mean,
Those days, to be able to pull off that kind of imagery with the resources I had is fabulous. Sorry, so I got distracted. So Star Wars, Bachchan Saab's films I've mentioned, a lot of the Charlie Chaplin films are things that I'll never ever forget. Because you have to remember, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. We didn't have access to unlimited, स्ट्रीमिंग प्लेटफॉर्म्स एंड चैनल्स. हमें तो मतलब एक फिल्म दिखाते थे संडे को, तो उस जमाने में टू बी एबल टू सिट एंड वॉच दैट वन ब्लैक एंड वाइट 20 मिनट 10 मिनट की चार्ली चैपलिन की आती थी, इट यूज्ड टू हैव अ ह्यूज इम्पैक्ट ऑन अस. One film I'd like to mention, not a very well-known film, fabulous film. Recently I showed it to some of my friends and they were blown away. It's a film called Killing Fields. And why I want to mention Killing Fields is that it's a true story. It's set in Cambodia and Vietnam, and it's basically the story of this American journalist and his what we call fixers. जो एक local एक आप जब आप जैसे हम अफगानिस्तान जाते हैं तो हमारा एक अफगान fixer होता है. He does things for you. So it's a story of an American journalist, I think from New York Times, and his Cambodian fixer and how they are stuck in this Cambodian war. And they all have to evacuate, and this guy gets left behind. And then this journalist attempts to locate him and get him out of Cambodia.
Wow.
It is you have to see it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I mention it, it's the first film that made me truly realize how beautifully a true story can be told with incredible emotion. And after that, that was stuck in my mind. Ki, make films that have that kind of resonance. So that's why when I was growing up, for me, Mani Ratnam sir was one of my favorite filmmakers. क्योंकि वो ये बहुत खूबसूरती से करते थे. एक good larger than life human drama and with the backdrop of politics. Like Roja is a film I'd like to mention, which again is one of my all-time favorites. Then in the recent times, one of the films that has done it beautifully for me, and I keep telling Raju that all the time, is Lage Raho Munna Bhai. The way Raju has handled the politics of that film and just the entertaining human story is just incredible. So I mean, one can go on and on, but so I'm just mentioning films that have had a great impact on me.
Yeah. Sir, okay, on a final note, मतलब फिल्मों के बारे में हमने इतनी बात कर ली, तो लेकिन थोड़ा सा loaded question है, but it's like slightly personal question also. How do you define happiness? What is happiness for you?
I think happiness is being able to do what you really want to. What really sort of, as I said, like even in films, for me, happiness stroke success is not the money and the glamour and the fame. Happiness and success for me in films is being able to tell the stories that I want to, and people combining with me and collaborating with me and helping tell that story. The day I'm told कि नहीं यार ये वाली मत बनाओ, वो वाली बनाओ, that day for me my success and happiness in telling a story will come to an end, and that day making films will become a job for me. Till today, making films is not a job. I feel I've never worked in my life. I'm only doing what I love. And I'm getting paid pretty well for it, so I can't ask for anything better. So I think happiness is being the ability to do what makes your heart happy.
और आज तक आपको नहीं करने पड़े ऐसे compromises?
I can't say कि हाँ बिल्कुल कोई compromise नहीं किया. Of course किया है. इतने लोग होते हैं कि कभी-कभी आपको करना पड़ता है. Sometimes you feel that this battle is not worth fighting. This battle is worth fighting, so you do that. So of course थोड़े बहुत होते हैं. I've said famously my first collaboration with Salman, there was a lot of to and fro. But because of that to and fro came an understanding which led to Bajrangi Bhaijaan. So I always will look back at that to and fro also with a certain fondness. वो नहीं होता तो वो नहीं होता. Of course that also went on to become a mega success, and now with the Spy Universe taking off, it continues. But yes, of course you make those little compromises. I'm not saying you'll ever be in a situation, but those are what we call little negotiations of life. As long as you don't negotiate and compromise on what is inherently you, which is your ideology, which is you never compromise in what you as a human being stand for. That's what is most important. The moment you surrender your ideology, and I've seen that unfortunately, especially in recent times with the kind of pressures that we have, people surrendering the ideology and what they stand for, that breaks my heart. When I see that, I know this is the death of a filmmaker. Because if we are not able to reflect what we are on screen, then what's the point of making these films? We don't, unlike a painting, we don't sign our name, right? But when you're seeing the film, I strongly believe, and this is something I tell a lot of newcomers who come to me, I said, कुछ भी बनाओ, जब आपकी film आए ना, the people who know you should say कि ये यही बना सकता है. That's what will make you stand apart, and that is what you need to bring. I mean, just replicating successful films is fine. I mean, then as I said, it's a job, it's a profession, and you can make a lot of money and be famous and enjoy all the other things. But if you really want to feel happy about the films you made and what you said, it has to come from within you. It has to be totally you. So you cannot compromise on your ideology and your politics. Everything else I call a negotiation of life.
So, sir, on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was such an insightful conversation for me as well, and I'll be looking back on it again and again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a big honor. It's a big pleasure. I really hope to, one, of course, I keep looking forward to your film, but at the same time, I hope I can get to work with you someday.
Looking forward to that. I'm glad we managed to do it this second time round.
Yes. And क्योंकि उस time फिर भी थोड़ा बहुत time constraints भी थे, सब कुछ था. And I was just too nervous to keep on continuing. But no, sir, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. I really enjoyed this.
This was Mr. Kabir Khan with Humans of Cinema.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode. My name is Ahona. I am the producer and the head of content at Humans of Cinema. We collaborated with MUBI for this episode and we hope that you've had as much fun watching the episode as we've had while making it. Now, a little bit about MUBI. MUBI is one of our favorite streaming platforms. MUBI creates and curates films, bringing cinema and its diverse voices to people from all over the world. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. With MUBI, each and every film that you see is hand-selected by its team of curators. You can discover the best of cinema from across the globe at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. Plus, with MUBI GO, you also get a free cinema ticket every week to watch the latest releases on the big screen. You can try MUBI free for 30 days at mubi.com/HOC2023 for 1 whole month of great cinema for free. Also, since Kabir Khan spoke about intense and compelling love stories coming from Iran despite the limitations, I would like to recommend Mohsin Makhmalbaf's Gappe. It is one of the most magical, moving, almost hypnotically folklorish films, with a kind of romance that reminds you of the intensity of desire. It is streaming on MUBI and it blends elements from magic realism and fantasy romance to create a film form that is both unique and moving.